What was your favorite Black horror franchise this year? Welcome to the Chitlin Circuit, and today we're breaking down the 3 latest entries in the Black horror genre. Spiral from the Book of Saw, Candyman 2021, and Season 1 of Them, Amazon's horror anthology series. If you're new to the channel, we are your source for Black film and TV on YouTube. So be sure to subscribe and click the bell for notifications. And be careful for spoilers from Them, Candyman, and Spiral. Since Jordan Peele broke the mold for what Black terror could look like, we've seen an influx of new horror stories on our screens. Often, these Black horror stories try to weave in a greater message about what it means to be Black in America. In Spiral, Chris Rock's character has to contend with a killer who is motivated by police corruption and is emulating the violent tactics of the Jigsaw killer to reform the department. Candyman 2021 is set 27 years after the first film and attempts to tackle the topic of gentrification. The Cabrini Green projects from the original movie has been redeveloped into luxury condos, and the Candyman legend went away along with the housing complex. In the new story, the Candyman legend persists despite this, and the journey for Yahya Abdul-Mateen's character culminates with him carrying on the mantle. Them is an anthology series set in the 1950s during the Second Great Migration. The series follows the Emery family as they move from North Carolina to an all-white neighborhood in Compton. Them tries to tackle the issue of housing discrimination and how racism has affected Black upward mobility for decades. Them follows the anthology model of American Horror Story on FX. We can notice the series is trying to position itself as the Black American Horror Story, which sounds great in theory, but the execution of the first season left many viewers with a bad taste in their mouths. Them has already been renewed for a second season despite the overwhelming negative response. Simply put, Them is doing too much. It started off telling a story about a Black family trying to adjust to an all-white neighborhood. But as the story progresses, the Emery family not only has to deal with the racism of their new neighborhood together, they are also tormented by individual traumas throughout the season. Lucky Emery is haunted by the brutal murder of their infant son, which is the morbid centerpiece of the season. Episode 5 is where we see the brutal demise of the Emery's infant son Chester in the brutal cat in a bag scene. This event colors Lucky's character for the rest of the series as she is constantly dealing with the trauma of losing her son in such a violent fashion. Eventually, an evil spirit in a black hat known as Hiram Ep tries to control Lucky into brutally murdering her whole family, a tactic which he has used in the past on any Black families who dare to purchase a home in the neighborhood. You would think this, the stress of being the only Black family in a new town, and fending off racist demons would be enough for a compelling story. But Them piles it on. Henry Emery is plagued with PTSD from his time serving in the military. We see a heartbreaking scene where Henry can't even enjoy a pie his daughter made him because it triggers memories of mustard gas experiments he was forced to endure during his service. This trauma eventually manifests itself in the form of a minstrel character called the Tap Dance Man, who haunts Henry throughout the series, especially in moments where he is reminded that Black men aren't treated equally despite his education and military service. Meanwhile, the daughters, Gracie and Ruby, are also haunted by their own literal demons. Miss Vera is an evil schoolteacher spirit that haunts the youngest daughter, Gracie. Meanwhile, Ruby is haunted by the spirit of a young white girl named Doris that only she can see. Doris plays on Ruby's feelings of inferiority and the Eurocentric standard of beauty she is forced to navigate. Eventually, this spirit convinces Ruby that she is in fact white, and Ruby covers herself in white paint and performs a cheer routine in front of all of her schoolmates. If it sounds like there is a lot going on this show, it's because there is. Instead of focusing on 1 or 2 interconnected stories that highlight the Black struggle in the 50s, Them decides to go for a buffet of Black trauma. Candyman, on the other hand, stays laser focused on the topic of gentrification. In the movie, an artist named Anthony looks for inspiration for his next art piece. He learns about the legend of Candyman and the events of the first film. In that movie, a baby was taken and almost sacrificed, but he was saved at the last moment. This baby ends up growing up to be Anthony, who had no knowledge of his part in the Candyman legend. Anthony creates an exhibit inspired by Candyman, but this leads to the murder of several people who decided to say his name 5 times into the mirror. As the story progresses, Anthony eventually transforms into the new Candyman, and Tiona Paris's character is left to spread the legend. Finally, Spiral zeroes in on police reform. Chris Rock plays Detective Zeke Banks, a cop who is at odds with his corrupt coworkers. His dad, played by Samuel L. Jackson, is the chief of police who has turned a blind eye to the corruption his officers have been participating in. After the elaborate torture and murder of several dirty cops, Jigsaw style, Zeke is eventually put in a position by the new killer to witness his father being punished for his crimes. The goal of this film's killer was to clean up the corruption in the police department that has affected him directly. Out of all these franchises, Them may have been the most ambitious, but their decision to tell multiple stories of Black trauma and pain throughout the season muddled any unifying message they were trying to tell. What started off as a journey into the horrors of being Black in the 1950s devolved into a buffet of Black trauma porn with no hope or redeeming message to hold on to. Deciding to layer trauma on top of trauma on the Emery family eventually becomes exhausting, which may have been the idea, but it didn't allow for an enjoyable viewing experience. Specifically, the cat in the bag scene may have been the most traumatic moment in the entire series, and we were given no context or motivation for any of the antagonist's action beyond racism. Ultimately, the schizophrenic storytelling, abundance of pain, and lack of hope in Them doesn't leave us too excited for the upcoming second season. Spiral and Candyman hit their marks a lot more accurately. Both are able to satisfy the genre's need for blood and gore, but they still manage to stay on their respective themes throughout the films. There's still more story to be told in Spiral, as the killer gets away, and Chris Rock's Zeke is still alive to deal with the aftermath of his father's murder. Candyman succeeded in rebooting the franchise while incorporating the original story seamlessly and laying the groundwork for potential sequels. The next major entry in the horror genre is Jordan Peele's upcoming film, Nope. We don't know a lot about this film, but we hope that it can live up to its predecessors, Get Out and Us. What did you think of the 3 Black horror franchises from 2021? Did you enjoy them? I won't lie, when I first saw the trailers, I thought it was the sequel to Jordan Peele's Us, especially since Shahadi Wright Joseph stars in both. Let us know which of these 3 you enjoyed most and why in the comments. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on another video. Thanks for watching the Chitlin Circuit.